Alrighty, how you guys doing today? Um, Today we're gonna be going over a video, Robert Byrne versus Bobby Fischer. Bobby Fischer is one of my favorite. It is my favorite chess player by far. Um, I really enjoy watching his play and just how he was like a one-man army, during the 1971 and 1972 Palm of America and World Chess Championship. But here, Bobby Fischer is playing black, and Robert Byrne is playing white. This was played in 1963, so Bobby was 20 years old, and he was already a very, very, very strong player at this point. Um, but it was not until 1971 that he would become truly strong. Alrighty, so let's jump into it. Um, White plays d4, knight f6, c4, and g6. Bobby often employed the King's Indian defense as one of his favorite openings. G3, c6, g2, d5, c captures d, c captures d, knight c3, and bishop g7. e3, castles, knight e2, knight c6, and castles. Alright, so now I've come into this position. Let's take note of the differences in the position. On most of the board, it's a symmetrical position, all except for these two files, the E and the F file. And specifically that being that the knights are, White's knight is a slightly less active position. As you can see, Black's knight can jump into a lot more useful squares, whereas White's knight does not have as many useful squares, or at least not as far invading squares as Black's knight has access to. This does open up White's light squared bishop. And then the other point is that currently Black's uh, bishop is locked into the pawn structure, and White's is not, although it's unclear about how much this is really going to benefit Black, because the dark square bishop doesn't have that much of a future along the f5, f5 to b1 diagonal. So Bobby plays from the differences in the position. b6, b3, um, sorry, bishop a6, bishop a3, and rook e1, or rook e8 to kind of get out of this pin and defend this pawn, and queen d2. Now the position has started to change up a little bit. There's a little bit of inequalities in the position, and Bobby capitalized on it instantly with e5. Here, Bobby is trying to break open the position and really capitalize on the fact that his knight is a lot more active than his opponent's knight here. Um, and additionally, this pin is kind of a pain. D captures E, knight captures e5, and rook fd1, breaking the pin here, but maybe a little bit prematurely, as there was other threats in the position. Here, Black is to play a wonderful move, knight to d3. This knight is very strong here, and it's not such an easy task for it to be removed either. Yeah, you can play knight knight to c1, but Black will still get to execute his plan. So yeah, you have to be careful with how you deal with this. Um, uh, White moves his queen is actually intending on just sacrificing the rook, but Black has other ideas and captures f2. Now that the rook has gone away from the f2 square, the king is the only thing defending it, and uh, Bobby sacks his knight. The whole point of this is that it allows Bobby to bring in his other knight with tempo. Knight g4 check, king g1, and then knight captures e3, forking the queen, rook, and bishop. Many of you, after the next move, would just play bishop captures rook, winning a rook for 2 pieces and a pawn. But Bobby was surprisingly, surprisingly enough, Bobby is a better player than both you and I, and he plays most precisely knight captures bishop on g2. This is an important move because it's eliminating a defender of the white squares. As you can see, white's king is pretty barren right now. The pawns are pushed far away from the king; they're not close, and if Bobby eliminates this light squared bishop, you can see all the holes that open up, and Mr. Byrne's king begins to feel very open. Next, uh, black plays d4, and this is primarily a tempo gaining move, and also opens up this diagonal for black's bishop to jump on here and really get into white's light squares. Knight captures, check, and f2. Um, Here, it seemed like here supposedly there was grandmasters watching the game and kind of commentating on it for spectators, and they said, "Oh yes, uh, it seems that Robert Byrne has won the game." And after Queen d7, um, Robert Byrne actually resigned. So they are most likely pretty shocked. Bobby said later that he was disappointed that um, Byrne resigned because he had really wanted to play. He had really wanted to play the checkmate idea that he had, which was after Queen f2, as the queen is really going to be stuck to the defense of the g2 square and defending the light squares around the king now that the bishop is gone. Queen h3 check. King g1, as the queen can't block it, and the queen still must defend here. And after the shocking rook e1 check, and this is really where it really gets hard, is first of all, you can't capture with the queen because you'll get checkmated on g2 with the queen and bishop combo. And if you capture with the rook, then you get bishop captures d4, and this pins the queen to the king, and you cannot capture because you're stuck to the defense of the g2 square. And what's even more right now is black can actually play. If it was black's turn, he could play queen g2 checkmate because this bishop is pinning the queen to the king. And so really there's no way to get out of here. Checkmate is following shortly afterwards. There is no good way to defend the g2 square, and so all you can really do is just throw away pieces at this point. There's no adequate defense. So a really amazing game, especially the combinative vision of sacking here on the knight on f2 with all of these ideas in mind whenever he made that sacrifice, and then once again eliminating the key defender of white's king position, very important, and just a beautiful finish to a game. So I hope you guys enjoyed the game. If you have any questions, you can leave them in the comments down below. And I hope to see you guys around again.